Hello everybody, Danny Jenkins here, CEO of ThreatLocker. Today I want to talk about security and security specifically in the MSP space. I'm joined by Brandis here at the Technology Specialist, who's been a partner of ThreatLocker for some time now and is somebody who really takes security seriously. So Brandis, thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
Maybe if you want to just give a little bit of an intro about you and how your MSP works in...
Okay. So my name's Brandis Kelly. I'm with the Technology Specialist in Wichita, Kansas. We've been in business since 2007, and our primary vertical is dental. So while security is very important to us, regardless of the vertical, it's especially important in healthcare and HIPAA compliance and that nature.
So over the last, I feel like this is a never-ending cycle, and I almost feel like just like this COVID pandemic, at some point we're going to hit a peak. But over the last 12 years, if you like, security has just become so much more important. The risks to businesses has become so much more important. And today, more than ever, as an MSP or as a dental office or any kind of business, the most likely way to go out of business is a cyber breach. And how are you finding that affecting your customers as an MSP? How does that drive your business forward, and how does that?
Yeah, so it's funny because so again, I'm from Wichita, Kansas. Like, we're in the middle of the country. We are the last to get anything. I swear, even COVID hit Wichita last, it seems like. But I will say that, back in the early days, we've been in business since 2007. Back in the early days, I remember some doctors not even caring if they had backup. Now it's second nature. Now there's not a dentist out there that's a client that's not going to have proper backup and taking images every 15 minutes and such. But it didn't used to be like that, right? But it's security, top of mind. It's continuing to get more and more and more just prevalent that it's no longer, as they say, it's no longer if, it's when. It's no longer if you're going to get hit with ransomware. It's when, and how you can safeguard against that. How the best way that you can try to lock down and prevent it. And there's no 100% guarantee on anything. But the way that we have really structured our security stack, our security suite, and how we're doing things for our clients as we've grown throughout the years is just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. I mean, and when I go to a new client, a new prospect, and talk to them about what we're doing now and how we're trying to prevent bad guys from getting in, I always tell them it's like a water balloon. Like, if you have a water balloon and you fill it really full and it's a flimsy balloon and you throw it against a brick wall, it's going to burst, right? It's going to be water all over the place. But if you take that same balloon and you put it in multiple other balloons, just keep going, keep going, keep going, and you throw it against a brick wall, it's going to bounce. So I try to relate it to them as far as, all these different layers that we have to put in place, and we have to just constantly be stepping up our game because the bad guys keep getting better daily.
And I feel like there's two parts to that as well. One is, you mentioned that they didn't care, doctors didn't care if they're about backups. And I think part of that is because 10, 15 years ago, if you're a dental office and you lose your computer, you can still clean people's teeth and you can still continue to work. Now, nobody can do anything without a computer. So not only is there more attacks, but there's more dependency on that technology.
Right.
And if my internet's down, if my computer's down, if anyone's computer's down in most businesses, their business is closed, even if it's down for 2 hours, or they are temporarily shut down.
Right.
And I feel like that is a huge part on why the attackers are getting more and more aggressive, because they can demand that when they hold you ransom and they've got your data, they know that you've got no choice but to pay that money now. And we saw that. I mean, last year there was 3 Florida cities that paid over $2 million in ransoms. And if you think back to 2001, if I said to someone on September 12th, 2001, the Florida government, US government, in county, city, states are going to pay foreign attackers money to get their data back, no one would have believed me. No one would have said this is something's going to happen. But the reality, I mean, we don't negotiate with terrorists, but all said and done. But we
do, right? But people are doing it across the country all the time. They are.
Yeah, all said and done, 500 Bitcoin is the cost of your data. And they're paying out these payments. Even government agencies are at such a point where they say, well, we can forgive people's heads being cut off, we can forgive people being shot, but we can't shut down our water supply.
Right.
So I'm willing to pay those bills. And it's not just government agencies, it's private sector, it's small businesses, it's large businesses. I mean, I saw a small car dealer pay $170,000 just to get their self up and running. And it really is pushing the envelope and say, and we saw 8.5 billion was the cost of ransomware last year. It's terrifying how bad it's getting.
Yeah, it's a business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. I mean, there are literally people out there that this is what they do all day. They try to hack, they try to get your information, they try to get your data, and gone are the days of file cabinets. What's a file cabinet, right? You don't have all of your patients locked up in a file cabinet that you go sift through when you need to track down a chart. It's not like that. Like you said, we're in the digital world. Everything's digital. So yeah, if you lose a server, if you're encrypted, if you're compromised in any way, if you take your laptop in your car and it gets broken into and stolen, I mean, there's so many different ways that data now gets out there, and now you're talking about a breach. Now you're talking about your reputation. You know, honestly, if I were going to go get a dentist, for example, and I saw that they had, listed in the newspaper a week ago or 2 weeks ago or a year ago, for that matter, whatever it is, that they had this massive breach and all their patients' data was leaked, I don't think I'm going to go there. You know what I mean? Like, that's huge.
Yeah, especially as they want your social security number and all of this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these guys are collecting so much data. And that's the other thing. I mean, people often think about ransomware as, oh, someone is going to encrypt my files and I can restore from the backup. And maybe the backup works and maybe it doesn't work. But they're not just coming in, they're not just restoring from the backup. What they're doing is they're saying, I'm going to take your data, I'm going to extract that data, and then you might think that you got your ransom back, but I've just sold all your data on the dark web, and now all of your clients are having bad days, they're having their identity stolen, and I can come back after you again because I know everything about you as a client, I know everything about you, so I'm going to keep hitting your business, and I'm going to tell all the bad guys, I'm going to sell your data to other bad guys, and they're going to keep hitting your business.
And it just spreads.
It really is terrifying.
Have you seen or have you heard, I'm sure you have in your industry, but did you, and this is a little while back, but the attack where they break in, they steal your data and everything, but then if you give up, like your friend or a neighbor, if you give them an email address or send them this virus in an email, if you will agree to do that to like so many people, they'll actually give you your data back without charging you. Have you heard that? Insane.
I have heard that, and the concept that you can make a deal with a criminal is it's kind of like
you're a moron if you think that you can make a deal with a criminal. Absolutely.
And that kind of comes down to paying ransoms as well.
Right.
Nobody really knows what percentage of ransoms result in data success and recovery.
Right.
And I've been involved where 2 ransoms were paid and there was no data back. But here's the thing: when you're paying these guys, you're not building orphanages, you're not helping children's charities.
Right.
You're feeding sex trafficking rings and organized crime and nation states and terrorists, and this money isn't going to good causes; it's going to criminals. And if you really expect them to give you your data back, it's kind of crazy. How do you feel your customers? I mean, sometimes I always feel like when I speak to people that they don't take security seriously, and like, are you kidding me? You are at so much risk. And yes, someone does give a damn about your computer. They do care about you.
Yep.
And they are going to go after you, even if you've got 2 employees, even if you've got 5 employees.
Yep.
How do you feel your business? Are most small businesses starting to realize that, or is it just some of them buried their head in the sand saying it wouldn't happen to me?
So first, we won't even take on a new client if they don't care. So because we drew a line in the sand as an MSP, as someone who's responsible, liable, we drew a line in the sand, if you don't care, then we can't help you. But second, and this is actually really unfortunate, it actually takes an act, it takes a moment, it takes a breach to impact how people are thinking, how people are perceiving security and threats. So I would say, if you asked me this question 5 years ago, not the same answer I'd give today. Because 5 years ago, it was just like, okay, yes, I care about my data. I don't really want to get attacked. They cared, but now we're getting more and more into this is real. And unfortunately, the reason that's happening is because it's happened near us. It actually has hit home. We've actually taken over clients in our city that had to pay ransoms, that had breaches, that had those things happen. And we also had, there's been a lot of small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. It's no longer the big guys. It's no longer just Target and Equifax and that. It's actually now, the little guys, the ones that they really, a lot of them can't recover from a breach like that. And it happened very recently, let's see, it's been almost a year now. There were over 100 dental practices kind of in our area. There were some in Kansas, some in Denver, some in the Colorado area. There was over 100 dental practices that had ransomware. I mean, that's huge.
I mean, healthcare is one of those targets. Well, and they're exposed in two ways. One is that there are very few businesses that have a physical presence where somebody can actually, and people do hack, they go into buildings, they'll plug in USB devices on the back of one desk, and it's one of the few businesses that is exposed to that because they have computers up front, they have public-facing people. But it's also, there's a little bit more attractiveness. You can get the data, you can get the encryption, you can get the ransomware, but you can also get the social security numbers and
credit cards.
You can credit cards. And we all know that doctors and also, unfortunately, some of them less computer literate people.
That's not their job. That's not their specialty.
So
I can't fix a crown. I mean, I understand that, right?
Yeah. And that's it. They've spent their entire life studying on their specialty.
Correct.
And quite often it's easier to trick them. And for me or you, it's very easy. This isn't Zoom. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to open this file. But sometimes if you're working in a healthcare practice, it's very easy for somebody to get tricked and somebody to get confused. One of the things we found is that there's a lot of changes in ransomware. There's a lot of new potential threats coming out. And traditionally, companies' approach to security is to keep adding more layers of detection. So a way a lot of companies think about security is they say, I get a virus, so I need more antivirus. I need to add another layer of either threat hunting or another antivirus. Or it's kind of like this mentality, well, I hired a bad guy. So I did a background check. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another background check. I'm going to do a deeper background check. And these are really important things. But we, as IT professionals, the answer seems to be, my antivirus failed me, so let me get a better one. And
I don't like antivirus. It's not like, I mean, it's becoming obsolete. You know what I mean? Like for us, just in reality, it really is. One antivirus is the same as the next, to be honest.
Yeah. It
doesn't matter what you pay for it.
Well, and that's it. I almost feel like when you spend more on your antivirus, you're paying for their marketing dollars. And if you look at, and I won't call out any names, but if you look at the so-called best antiviruses, look at because these are all invested-backed companies. So you can look at their spend and you can look at these $400 million in investment. And the idea that, I was in Orlando last week at a trade show, and I asked how many people changed their antivirus 3 times in the last decade, and most of the room had put their hand up. And the simple answer was because they believed that if I get a better solution, and they get their solution, and they go to bed at night, and they feel safe. But the reality is we can't just chase a threat. We have to have physical controls. And obviously one of the things that ThreatLocker does is we try and encourage the approach of denying by default. So instead of doing what an antivirus does, where you look for the bad guys, we say everyone's a bad guy. You don't leave your front door open and say you can come in if you're not a bad guy. You say everyone's a bad guy. Every piece of software is a bad guy. We don't want to let anyone in our house. We don't want to let anything run unless it's trusted. And the reason I asked you to speak to me today is because you guys have really embraced that. You've embraced that zero trust approach, and we always like to find partners who are really going to take security seriously and not use it as we can sell you better security for more money. I think you guys have said security is important for our customer. It gets on all of our customers' machines, and you've pushed ThreatLocker out.
Yes.
How's your experience been on this transitioning from just chasing the threat to denying by default to zero trust?
You're very right. You can't chase a threat, and just because the person doesn't look like a bad guy, you don't know that they're not a bad guy. So the zero trust approach from ThreatLocker is absolutely zero trust. You're not lying when you say that. I mean, everybody is. I mean, you really do. It's absolutely zero trust, and we tell that to our clients. I mean, we tell them this is how it works. We pushed it out to 1,500 endpoints over a weekend. So it if I could do things differently, there are probably some things I would do differently. We would have, broken down our clients into just chunks, maybe 500 at a time. That way we weren't bombarded with everything that happened all at once, as far as notifications and whatnot, and making sure that we're doing our due diligence on our end to make sure that anything that we allowed is legit, is trusted. But I mean, it went surprisingly well. Yes, we had some hiccups. We had a couple weeks of just guys being on call constantly, paying attention, explaining to clients if they didn't happen to get our emails, because we also blasted them out. 3 different emails prior to ever doing it, showing pictures of what the little box looks like, right? Saying, okay, if this happens, then you click here and this is what happens. And I mean, we really did our best to spell it out to them and let them know what they were, what they could anticipate. But that doesn't mean that everybody reads their emails. So, but it really, I mean, it's been great. It's been great since then. And you talk about sleeping better at night. You kind of do. You kind of can. I mean, you do have, and we do have layers. We have other things that we use as well. But it's just another, tool in our belt that we can sleep better at night, have some peace of mind.
Well, and the thing is, as an MSP, if somebody gets a piece of malware, I'll talk about getting it through email. There's lots of ways you can get malware. There's rubber duckies, there's hijacks of APIs on RMMs, there's lots of different ways. But we think about the most obvious way, which is how most breaches at least start. Mm-hmm. Somebody opens an email attachment, somebody clicks on a link and it downloads something on their computer. As it stands for many businesses, there's 2 ways to stop that. One is the user doesn't open it. Mm-hmm. And I would like to think all users will not open things, but we're a technology company, and you mentioned you don't know how to fix a crown.
No.
But I mean, we do phishing tests and we do sample tests and we do all these things, and we still have guys click on emails, and it blows my mind. It's like, how in a technology company, how when we do nothing but talk about security all day long, are
it's
you
human error though?
Willing to click on this link? And it kind of, we make jokes of it in the staff call, but it really keeps me up that these guys, it doesn't matter how much we train them, they've all done the phishing training, they've all done the email training. We have people in our sales department, we have people in our accounting department, and even in our tech departments that, I mean, somebody clicked on a link recently because it said one of the management team had sent a gift. They clearly don't know me too well because we're not sending gifts to anyone. But the one way we can stop it, of course, is to get the users not to do it. Unfortunately, it's humans make mistakes.
Yes.
And when you start talking about 1,500 endpoints, that's a lot of people potentially to make mistakes. The next thing we can do, which is what a lot of people do, is to hope that the antivirus is going to detect it. And here's the problem with that. There's 2 fundamental flaws. One is it just doesn't detect it all the time.
No.
And we can hope that post-breach, maybe the threat hunting will detect it, but at this point, we're trying to deal with cleanup then.
Yeah.
And where ThreatLocker, where the zero trust comes in, as we say, we're not going to hope anything. We're going to take the control. If something tries to execute, if a piece of code tries to run on your machine, and it's not on the whitelist, it's not allowed to run. And that's really putting the control in your hands. And there's 2 real benefits and that I see from that, but I'd like to see your opinion. One is you're not just dealing with the malware, but you're also dealing with someone sends your client a TeamViewer link, or somebody sends your client a GoToAssist link. And you're also dealing with that whole shadow IT thing, where you guys put a nice machine out there, you've cleaned it, it's secure, and you go in 6 months later and there's 4 different browsers installed. How's your experience been? Did your customers push back much on that, or?
We had a few. We did. I mean, everybody's going to have a few, right? We did have a few that, but I, that did push back a little bit. It was slowing them down because they had to constantly request permission, but all it took on our end was just sitting down and having that conversation with them and saying, here's the reason why. Like, it might be a slight inconvenience to you right now, but it could save you in the long run, because there's all kinds of things that could happen if we didn't have this on here that you might not be wanting to happen. You might not realize is happening. It could happen in the middle of the night. I mean, there's, it could happen over holidays. I mean, a lot of times, people in wherever, Russia or China, whoever's hacking us, or in our own backyard, to be honest, but they also know that during COVID, for example, they know that dental practices were also down to emergency patients only, right? So they know that everybody's working from home. They know that there's a lot of computers that are sitting there at the practice that aren't being touched, aren't being monitored. So what could have been happening at that time? I mean, fortunately, we had kind of gotten our ducks in a row prior to that, so we're very lucky. But you know, even with the pushback, it was just a conversation because it's not convenient. Security is not supposed to be convenient. You know, you mentioned September 12th of 2001 earlier, right? So, okay, let's dial back to September 10th of 2001. You think we had to jump through all these hoops that we have to go get on an airplane?
No, I mean,
you could just like walk right by, right? So security now has obviously been tightened down. TSA is obviously tightened down. Now you have to take off your shoes and put everything in separate bins and 3.4 ounces of this and that. I mean, so it's not convenient, but it's necessary. Security is not convenient, but it's necessary. And we had to have that conversation with our clients.
And I think that's the thing, adding these controls in place, I hate the fact I have to use dual factor authentication on every account I have. But you know, I'm quite happy that I'm not allowed to install new software because the reality is I shouldn't be running new software anyway. It should be a decision that your IT department, your MSP, is involved in. And it doesn't seem unreasonable that you say, I want to install a new PDF reader. Let me check with my MSP if they have a better solution for me. If I'm trying to install Qt PDF, maybe they say, why don't you use Adobe? You already have a license for it for stuff. There's all those other benefits as well. Now, obviously ThreatLocker has a bunch of other components as well with the file access and the ring fencing. Have you guys had much need to use, the ring fence is kind of turned on by default, but have you had much need to use the file access logging, the USB controls, any of those things in your businesses or not?
I don't think so as much. I couldn't speak to that as much. I know that they do ring fencing on that is used often, but unfortunately I couldn't speak to that as much. If you know, Steve were here, if Shane were here, if Austin were here, they'd be able to just chat you up all day long about that. But
yeah, and the concept of the ring fencing is really that when you do allow software, you put some constraints around it. So if the CEO or the doctor in the dental practice says, I want to run Angry Birds, and you say, well, I don't like Angry Birds, but I'm going to let you run it, but it can't access your files. And very important and very subtle but big difference between a program that was written by someone in college who didn't think about security can access your files, and now we're going to say we're going to put some boundaries around that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because we're dealing with doctors, and to be honest with you, it's probably across any vertical. You know, he's the doctor, she's the doctor. If they want whatever, they're going to get whatever. We just have to do our best to try to make that as secure as possible. So ring fencing is instrumental in that. Yeah,
I'm not so nice with our staff. They know not to hit request permission because nothing's getting approved.
Right.
Now, if you guys, I mean, one of the things that ThreatLocker obviously offers our partners is that 24-hour support. Have you guys had many reasons to talk to our cyber heroes to get help, and how's your experience been with that?
We have. We love the cyber heroes, actually, and the response time is impeccable. We really appreciate that. As an MSP, we really pride ourselves on responsiveness and support. And so if there's ever anything that we need support on, we're a little high maintenance when it comes to wanting it quickly. You know, like I want what I want, and I want it now. And you guys have been great. We have actually had to reach out a couple different times. We did a major transition of our RMM and PSA tool. And we needed some help because we were just running up against problems with ThreatLocker and our RMM at the time, just fighting, not playing nicely. So we reached out, and I believe they just click on a little icon and type something up, and they're
and that's
off to the races. And we've also actually, I think we've even reached out to you once, and we've had amazing response times. We've had just the support alone. We've been very appreciative of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, me as I'm a technical person. My background's technical, and we pulled out of Office 365 about a year and a half ago because we couldn't get support from Microsoft, and my email wasn't working. So, and for me, it's important that we extend that because I know as an MSP, if you can't get support from your vendors, then
it's bad.
It's bad. So at the beginning we said, look, we need 24-hour support, and we need it to be based here in the US. We don't want any offshore support. We need people who can get on the phone, who can get on a Zoom call, who can get on a live chat 24 hours a day. I think our average is about 48 seconds. And
yeah, it's very quick.
It goes over 60 and people start getting in trouble. But
that's awesome, though. I mean, you could probably just sell yourselves on that alone, because so many of the vendors, they don't offer that. They don't have that. I mean, you know what I mean? And so for someone who's in this world, we are in the support world. We know what responsiveness looks like. We know, what support in general is supposed to look like. So, I mean, you can't joke a joker. Like, you can't fake it. So it's very real. You guys have done a great job.
Thank you. How have you felt, bringing on new customers, and do you feel like having Zero Trust, bringing these more enterprise level controls, because that's what these are. I mean, application whitelisting is mandated by the federal government, but pretty much non-existent, or it certainly was non-existent 18 months ago in the MSP space. We're certainly starting to see changes there. But how do you feel that gives you an advantage, or when you go to your clients, when you talk to them, new clients, and say, this is how we do security?
Well, as I kind of mentioned earlier with COVID and having spikes in attacks on small to medium-sized businesses, we have, there's been a few deals now that we've closed that they've gone with us because of our security, because of our take on security and what we actually are putting top of mind and care about. It's not like security is an afterthought, or protection is an afterthought. It's like a forethought. It's the number one thing. Like, this is what's driving. So I would say it's been very beneficial, because every time, well, right now it's all politics, but every time you look at the news, there's another breach, there's another story. It's becoming just more of a regular thing that you're almost desensitized to it. Well, you're not. You might be more desensitized to the bigger corporations, because it's just like, oh, okay, well, now it's Target, now it's whoever. But when you start talking about people close to home, when you start talking about people, near us in Kansas, or even around Kansas, in the Midwest, and you start noticing that it's not huge, major, multi-billion-dollar corporations. It's the little guys. It's scarier. It puts it, at our clients, our prospects, also their top of mind, so that we are able to just come in and say, hey, no, here's how we handle that.
I think that's important that you mentioned, because the news also likes to print the big media. They like to report that Tesla nearly had a ransomware attack, and that Garmin paid out $10 million, and the state of Florida paid out $2 million, and Baltimore paid out $25 million. But unfortunately, for every one of those, there's 5,000 smaller companies. And there's two things. One is it's just not newsworthy. And secondly, because it's happened so often, it's not news. Just like COVID-19, it almost should be a stat on the right side of the screen now this number's just going higher and higher and higher and higher. And the second thing is, small businesses don't want to stand up on the rooftops. I mean, some of these big public companies have responsibilities to disclose. But as a small dental office, you're not going to stand up and say, we breached your data. We don't want, nobody wants to get that out there. So sometimes people don't hear about it. You hear about it, I hear about it, MSPs hear about it, but it really is terrifying. So being able to be a partner, an MSP that can come in and say, look, we're going to do more. We're here to be, and being in the dental industry, I imagine that your clients get this, because they say to their clients, floss every day, and sometimes the clients may not want to, but it doesn't matter. You've got to hear what you've got to hear. You've got to hear the bad news. You've got to hear the good news. Right. So, and you're essentially, it's your responsibility almost to say that.
Absolutely.
I don't care if you don't like flossing. I don't care if you don't like to go. This is what you need to do. And we're here to give you bad news as well as good news. We're not here to, you don't go to the doctor and say, oh, I don't want to know I've got cancer. I don't like you anymore. Right. You've got to hear the reality from your MSP. And as a partner, I've seen you guys are doing a great job at really driving security to your clients, and not just hiding in the background because bad news is not something they want to hear.
Right. And sometimes that's a really tough conversation, but we are responsible for their network, for managing them. That's our due diligence to them. We're responsible. We're on the hook for anything that happens, to be honest. Your employee is your biggest threat. It's not somebody in Russia, it's your employee, because they're actually the one that's probably going to be the most likely to bring it in, right? It's because the dude from Russia isn't actually going to come break in with a sledgehammer on the front glass, window and steal your server and go put something on. That's not the way it's going to go down. So, your employees are your biggest threat. And it is our responsibility as your MSP, as your service provider, that that we've got to, like you said, I mean, we've got to tell you everything that could happen and all the bad things that are out there, and kind of at least light a little fire and make sure you're understanding that the threat is real. Because being in the center of the country in Kansas, it took us a little more. It took a little longer than, I mean, it maybe should have, because it's like, oh, you know, that's happening out there. That doesn't impact us. The Midwest is just different. But, you know, we're there now. It's very real now, and it's a conversation that we're very used to having. And to be honest, we don't even have pushback anymore, because now people care. Now people want it. Now they want somebody who actually cares about security and is not just going to blow smoke and talk about it. They're going to actually implement and have a plan and put this in place, and here's how we're going to address this, this, and this.
Is there anything you wanted to add? I mean, you work with a lot of small businesses that you think is important for companies and other MSPs to know?
Like I said earlier, when you say zero trust, you are not lying. But that is a huge benefit. I mean, you really do have to allow everything. There are ways to push it out easily. Maybe in little chunks. You could do it like we did it. Do it all at the same time. But you have provided us, everything that we needed to deliver that message to our clients, and all the way down to even a liability form that we never ended up having to use, but I had it just in the event that anybody wanted to say, no, I don't want this on our machine. And we were actually using it in such a way, okay, you can sign here, and this basically releases us of any and all liability if you do anything stupid on your network. But we were also firing that client. So had that happened, and like I said, we never used it, but had that happened, we were also prepared to say, we will help you we'll give you 30 days, we're going to help you transition to a new service provider. In the meantime, sign on this line, because in those 30 days, if anything happens, that's on you.
You mentioned the liability form, and did you work with our success team on helping get case studies for your clients and brochureware so they could understand the risks, or did you not need to do that?
I worked with Adam a lot, and he gave me everything I needed. And so what we did is we actually put together an email blast that we blasted out to all of our clients, because in doing it that way, we were able to see who opened it and who didn't. And we also told them about our upgraded cybersecurity suite. If some of them that didn't have that knew that we had that. We actually did charge for this. We did it. I mean, and we came at our clients like, listen, it's important that we are staying in tune with the rising threat in order to combat that. Like, you have to keep trying to combat more and more and more, and adding better services and products. And I mean, it is what it is. And that's why we gave it as an option. So you can either do A, and this is what you're going to be paying, because even as a pass-through cost, like, we're paying for it, because if we're going to be paying for something, we're sure not going to pay for some crappy antivirus. If I'm going to invest good money into something, I want to know that it is, it's proven in its track record, and this is what it does. And I mean, we obviously pushed it all out to our own devices, so we knew exactly what we were getting into. But we basically said, hey, this is what you're going to pay. This is when it's going to go in effect. This is what it's going to look like. If you see this box and because it's trying to run something on your computer, you're going to request permission. We'll be taking a look at it on our end, and here's how this is going to play out. And we spelled the whole thing out for them, and then at the bottom it said, if you're opting out, you'll be signing this liability waiver, and then we'll help you transition to your new provider. And we didn't have to use that. Nobody fought at all. And that's also a lot of times, sometimes there's that fear that you don't want to charge for something, right?
Well, you don't want to force it. Yeah, I mean, no one wants to be the bad guy.
Yeah, but you know what? But there is a bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? And that's who we're fighting. Like, the real bad guy. We're not the bad guy. We're trying to save you from the bad guy. Yeah. So.
Well, and you don't yell at your doctor when he tells you need to take some blood pressure medication.
It's not his fault. Yeah. He's a messenger.
So.
Right.
I think as a small business, it's really important to find a good partner. And like you said, you work with Michael a lot on our team, and he asked me to speak to you today because my background's in security, and I've done everything from ethical hacking to advising big multinational organizations to some of the worst ransomware attacks you could imagine on recovery. And it really is important to us to have good partners, and you guys have done a great job. And like you said at the beginning, you pushed out really fast, and you kind of regretted that a little bit, but you did that because you cared about your client security. And for us at ThreatLocker, we think that's really important. And we work with a lot of MSPs and a lot of good MSPs, but we've really found that you guys as a partner have done a great job, and you care about your clients beyond just, oh, well, I want to look good, I want to make them feel good. You genuinely care, and we think that's important. And our cyber heroes, Michael, have relayed that back to us. So we appreciate you guys being a partner, and anyone who's looking for an MSP, the technology specialists aren't the type of MSP you turn down. And I know nothing about how you guys bill your clients, but I know as a business owner what's important to me in an IT world is that this stuff just works and it's secure, and I want to go to bed at night and know that things are working. And I feel with you as a partner of ThreatLocker, and that you guys take security seriously across all levels, and we appreciate your partnership.
Well, thanks. Yes, very much so. We do take it very seriously, and we've been very appreciative of ThreatLocker. I mean, it is, peace of mind in a application whitelisting world.
Everyone, thank you for taking the time to listen. If you do want to find more about ThreatLocker, just visit to us at www.threatlocker.com, and you can schedule a 45-minute demo. It's really worth your time. Thank you.